All right, returning to our script of the day, Elegant Eccentrics, where we left off in part one. We were getting kind of a feel for how Lori was living her life now in her 60s. Now she's a complete hermit. Now she's a complete hermit, living alone in her apartment for the last 30 years, ever since that tragedy involving the car crash where her 5-year-old son died. It's a bit cliche to put an angle like that, a character's motivation based on a child's death, but it is what it is. I needed to put something there, and it seemed pretty realistic. A famous musician, composer, she gets her song on the radio while she's driving. She turns up the volume, and she doesn't pay attention to the road, and by accident she gets in a crash and her son dies. It seems like a likable enough story, so I went with it. So Laurie's character is kind of conflicted, and in between, after I read part one and did that 2 hour talk, I kind of went back in time to my original posting back in November 2023, where I first shared this script, and I watched the videos about NASA's Explorer, or Voyager, sorry, when they sent the record to space. It was actually Bill Nye giving a brief introduction of it, brief explanation of why they did it and how they did it and all these other things. It was pretty interesting. It was from the United Nations, I believe, and they just put all these voices on this record, and I'm actually not sure if there was electronic music. I have to look that up next, I guess. Because actually, during that short little clip, if you go on my Substack, I don't know if there's a way to search for things, but you go back to November of 2023 in my Substack, and you'll find that I have all my 12 episodes listed there, and you could read my scripts on those sites for free. And I don't know if there was an angle to that. I don't know now. Was there electronic music sent up on that record, or did they do it again? I have to do more research myself to give me a little bit better understanding of NASA's mission back in the 70s. I also watched a little video about Laurie Spiegel at Bell Labs, and it was really good. I forgot how likable of a person she is. She's just the way she explains it's really brilliant, and it shows her playing the old-fashioned synthesizer. It just looks like a computer module from like a Kubrick movie or something. If you go on YouTube, I'm sure you can find it easily. Laurie Spiegel, Laurie Spiegel. I think it's Spiegle. I forget now myself. But yeah, look her up. Expanding Universe is one of the albums I got. I actually had it on vinyl. It was like a 3 record set, and I don't even know if I got to listen to it. It's kind of like that Twilight Zone episode that Joe Rogan talked about with David Cross, where the one guy, he survives a nuclear blast, and now he has all the time in the world to read his books, but then his glasses break, so he's left to be alone in the universe, and he can't even read his fucking books now. That's kind of what happened to me. I bought all these records because sometimes I do that. And I didn't have a huge record collection. I did in the past, but I kind of gave them all away to Goodwill a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And then I was kind of slowly building up a vinyl collection based on artists that I was interested in, like Pentagram, or not Pentagram, Pentangle. I'm thinking of satanic shit. Pentangle. Maybe that's similar to the pentagram. They have kind of that star symbol or something, but they were a folk band in England in the, I guess, the 60s, 70s. Some famous musicians and really amazing music. So I had to buy all their albums, Pentangle, and then Laurie Spiegel, I was like, this album was pretty meaningful, so I bought that on vinyl because they reissued it. I don't know what year it was, and some other ones. And regrettably, when I was trying to listen to a lot of records, my receiver broke at that time, and now I just don't have the ability to, and all those records are gone. I had probably close to maybe 200 at that point. And yeah, Expanding Universe, if you don't know Laurie Spiegel, you could get it anywhere. It's on Spotify, it's probably on YouTube or other places. Go support her because she's really awesome. And look her up on YouTube. You'll find interviews with her, or on my Substack page, you can find a short interview with her talking about the beginning of electronic music. She's very, very brilliant musician. And again, yeah, she is not connected to this character at all. This character is completely fictional. I picture in my head, what's her name? Winona Ryder kind of playing this role. If you make her look old and kind of, I don't know, kind of disheveled, and you have to age her a good bit, but it would be kind of cool to see how she would handle a role like this. There's not much more to talk about before I get started reading. I'm going to try to stay away from some of the pharmaceutical things since I talked like my ass off about that in the first part. And see where this goes as a stream. I don't prepare for this. I haven't read the screenplay in a couple years, like all of my screenplays. But as I reintroduce myself to this universe and to the characters and to the dialogue, certain things pop in my head that reminded me of where my head was back then. Because there is a lot of me in this story. I lived like a hermit for a good 4 or 5 years, completely absent from society, didn't want to be around anybody for numerous reasons. Mostly because when the pandemic started, all this crazy shit started going down. So it just kind of continued until I got evicted last year. And so there's a bit of me in this story when I read it now, even though all these events that happened to me kind of happened after I wrote this, some of them at least. I wrote this after COVID, after 2020, when all that shit went down. But there were still reverberations from all the shit that I had to go through during that period that probably found its way in this story, and I still notice it now. Especially as we go into part 2, when Lori leaves her apartment and goes walking to the grocery store and stuff. I wasn't exactly in her state of mind, but close. I was having some weird moments as well. So we're on the top of page 22. If anyone ever listens to this and wants to follow along, we're on the top of page 22. We're just about exactly halfway through this story. It's only 44 pages. So just like Black Mirror, some of these episodes will be an hour. Some of them will be maybe an hour, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They all kind of vary. But the majority would probably average, these are about an hour episodes. Even if this is 40 pages, 44 pages, there's plenty of room for the space scenes to really stretch those out and make the audience more immersed in that flavor. I want to have that juxtaposition, the grandness of the universe and the vastness of space that's just total chaos. There's no president in the universe. There's no social structure. There's no social codes. It's just complete chaos. Who knows? It's controlled chaos, I guess I could say. Is that what I just said? It's controlled chaos, but it's also just total chaos. Like, there's no... We try to build these mini, almost soap operas. I always wonder, why do people turn to that dark side? And by the dark side, I mean like the cunty side, the life of drama, always looking for drama and these social battles between family, friends, co-workers, whatever, strangers, Why do people go towards that direction of manipulation and shit like that? It doesn't make sense to my brain because it's such a waste of time and energy. I don't really know. I'm sure there's a bit of narcissism to that and a bit of just ever expanding ego, the universe inside of us, which I compare to the ego. If you want to say there's a universe inside of each of us, Gillian Welch had a song she co-wrote with someone called There's a Wilderness Inside. It's kind of similar to that. There's a wilderness inside of you. I forget how it goes. I forget the artist though. But she at least sang on that song. I forget who the guy was. And that's kind of what I mentioned in the first part of this, that's the juxtaposition I want the audience to subconsciously always be thinking of, that, you know, whatever your bullshit is during the day as you try to get through the day and you can't sleep at night because you have stupid thoughts in your head and you don't know where you're going. Like myself, I don't have a job right now. I've applied to like 100 Starbucks across the West Coast. I got 2 interviews, supposedly real interviews, tomorrow and Thursday with this Starbucks in New Mexico and in Arizona. Who the hell knows if they're real? I'm just trusting that these are actually real opportunities or whatever. It sucks to not be in control of your future. I said I just want to make my art and be able to survive like that. I don't think that's really a radical way that I'm trying to form the rest of my life. I don't think that's a radical goal to set for yourself. But it seems like it because other people don't know what it's like to live like this. Now, I looked that up. Wilderness Within You is a 2023 folk Americana song by Parker Millsap. Yeah, he's cool. I've listened to some of his stuff featuring Gillian Welch. It's good. I listened to that album back then, 2023. Wilderness Within You by Parker Millsap. That's some connection to this story, what I'm trying to speak about now. But there's a reason that cliche exists. What, you think you're the center of the universe? Like, people say that all the time to people who are out of control with their egos. Sometimes need to get punched in the nuts, or if you're a woman, punched in the ovaries to just wake your pretentiousness up, or not wake it up, but put it out of its misery. Because once you let that pretentiousness junk filter through your brain and hit your frontal lobe, and everything you talk is not real, your conversations aren't real, it's just mumbo jumbo. Everything you say is not directed in an honest fashion. A lot of people fall into that trap where the words they speak, they have different motivations for speaking these words, sometimes nefarious, sometimes just to manipulate someone. And it's probably why people take vows of silence throughout their life, just to shut down all that nonsense. Maybe that's what Lori was going through after her kid died, and she thought her universe was over. She couldn't forgive herself, and that's a plot line that's been used before. I'll mention that movie Starman with, I think, Jeff Bridges, but I could be wrong, from the 80s. Starman, I think it's John Carpenter, and I wrote about it in my on my Substack post back in November of 2023. Like I said, when I first shared this script. And then some years later, maybe 2 years later, I was just dicking around, and I remember that movie as a kid, so I rented it from Amazon or whatever. And I think there is a connection. I think Jeff Bridges, he's an alien consciousness, but they hear something on the golden record, and then he comes to Earth, and he takes the shape of this woman's dead husband. And then the story goes from there. So it's very similar to this plot. It's a good movie. I did watch it. I don't know the actress's name, but it's the woman from that Indiana Jones movie. I think. I don't know her name, sorry. And yeah, it's really good. You could see, yeah, John Carpenter. Yeah, he's one of my favorites. He has the one movie with Roddy Piper. It's all like this dystopian Reagan era about government big brother control. It's pretty good. But he's done a lot of good movies. You got to give John Carpenter his credit, his due, because he's done so many good things. My favorite horror movie, Halloween. A lot of science fiction, a lot of thrillers, almost like a Stephen King type of appeal to his writing and his artistry. Like Halloween is just, it's up there for me. If it's not my favorite horror movie, it's hard to beat. The music involved, everything is just perfect for a low budget film. I don't think you could do anything better than Halloween. You can't do that movie today. Whatever it costs to produce that movie, and it's pretty cool. I used to live in Collingswood, New Jersey. I still live around there in southern New Jersey, and Haddonfield is around here. In the movie Halloween, and I mentioned that before, they actually named the town Haddonfield, Illinois, because one of the screenwriters, was from this area that I live in. So it's kind of cool how that's connected. But yeah, I don't think you can make a low budget horror movie like that. Maybe Blair Witch was a different version of it in the 90s. These kids were like, yeah, we can just do handheld cameras and like make it like a fake documentary, mockumentary, whatever you call it. And we could do this pretty cheaply with unknown actors. It'll be just like if people found this footage in the woods, and that's how we'll market it. And I think they did a pretty good job with the marketing and everything. They even did sequels to that movie. It was such a revolutionary cinematic experience. I'd have to watch Blair Witch again to really, really judge it. But I did see it in the theater, and because the buzz was there, everyone was like, this Blair Witch movie, Blair Witch, Blair Witch. And yeah, it was good. I'm not poking fun at it. I think it would hold up if I watched it again. Sober. I think I was sober back then when I watched it. It would probably freak me out to an unhealthy degree if I was on something. But I think that was like Burkittsville, Maryland. I remember I went to school in Maryland later at Towson University near Baltimore. And I always remember like, oh, I want to go visit Burkittsville, go see where the Blair Witch was filmed. It's almost like New Jersey has that too. They had the Jersey Devil and other kind of haunted areas of New Jersey like that. So yeah, why was I talking about this? I have no idea. We're going to page 22 now. And we're going to start the second part of this story before I talk myself into circles and I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is usual. All right, now we're at the apartment hallway. We left this scene. All right, let's go back in time a little bit. We just had that juxtaposition between looking at the planet Earth from space as the pharmaceutical commercials playing, and you have that voiceover. Now it's the next day as Lori's nurse is knocking on her door from the hallway, and the nurse says, "Lori." She waits a few moments, then she knocks harder. Nurse: "Mrs. Springle, Mrs. Springle, I have your meds. I really need to speak with you. Mrs. Springle, don't make me call the police again. Please, open the door, please." Now, inside her apartment, Lori is kind of in bed. She looks very disheveled and she looks worse than before. Her eyes are kind of bugged out, like she hasn't been sleeping much. And the TV's still on. You always have the glow of the television whenever you go into her apartment and film in there. Lori is staring towards the nurse through the peephole, and then she finally lets her in, but she backs away from her. Nurse: "Oh, hi, Mrs. Springle." Lori stares back blankly, like she hasn't conversed with a real person in years. Nurse: "Or maybe this is the only woman she would allow in her apartment." Nurse: I know you don't like me coming in, but I needed to tell you that I'm no longer going to be servicing you. The nurse sticks out her noticeably pregnant belly. Nurse, as you can see, I have some other matters to attend to, but a new nurse should be filling my spot sometime soon. She notices Lori's haggard condition. Nurse, have you been taking your meds? Lori stares at her blankly, not saying a word. Nurse, sleeping okay? Lori keeps her empty gaze. Nurse, well, until a new nurse gets assigned, I brought a little more than a month's supply, just in case. She holds up a card. Nurse, if you really need something, please don't hesitate to call this number anytime, okay? She puts the card inside the bag. Nurse, I hope you have a safe, healthy winter, Mrs. Springle. She scans the apartment, staring towards the bare white walls, one chair, the old TV against the wall, a radio in the kitchen, and Lori's cat who's eating from the bowl. Nurse, I really should have helped you decorate this place back when I started. Lori tries to form a smile. Nurse, next time I swing by, I will at least bring you some plants and add some life to this place. She hands Lori the bag and walks towards the door to exit. Nurse, just make sure you keep taking your meds. Lori nods as the nurse embraces her awkwardly, then exits. She shuts the door as the sound of a violin echoes from Beverly's apartment next door. The sounds of a violin echo from Beverly's apartment next door. Lori's eyes light up as she recognizes the melody from the violin, which is a beautiful piece from Gustav Holst, The Planets. Now we're doing a flashback in the mind of Lori. Inside an orchestra, Lori's in her 20s. She's playing a violin solo to a packed crowd. Maybe the same type of music that Beverly was just playing next door. From The Planets, Gustav Holst, The Planets. It just fits. Like, this story's about the universe, so why not use Gustav Holst, The Planets? Which I did enjoy. I did listen to that and purchase that album. You would find it on vinyl a lot, actually. Out in the wild, you could get it for $1. It's good. If you ever find Gustav Holst, The Planets, go purchase it and listen to it. It is really good. I think every movement is like a different planet, maybe. I could be wrong about that. All right, so now the ceiling lights go out inside this orchestra as Lori's kind of remembering this moment in her life, as the entire auditorium is now enveloped in darkness. One single spotlight comes around and shines down on Lori as she appears as her 5-year-old self now. And she's masterfully playing her original composition that was sent up to space. So it's kind of a trippy type of a flashback. We begin with Lori in her 20s playing this violin to a packed crowd. And then as the lights go black, when we come back, we see her as a 5-year-old playing the same thing. It's a very quick flashback. Now we're in Lori's car. The second part of this flashback at night, as Lori in her 30s is driving down a city street with her, what did I say, 4-year-old or 5-year-old son? I forget. Whatever, he's around that age, 4 or 5, as he's seated in the passenger seat. She turns the volume up to the radio, while 60-year-old Lori sits in the back seat. So there's 2 different versions of her in this car. And Beverly is sitting next to the older version of Lori in the back, holding her hand. The car swerves into the next lane as the scene is immersed in darkness at this point. End the flashback here. All right, now we're moving, what was that, daytime? We're moving to the next day, yeah. Violin music. Or I'm sorry, no. When the nurse came to visit Lori, that was daytime. We're moving back to that time period. As inside Lori's apartment, the violin music continues from Beverly's side. As Lori grips tightly onto her bag of meds and her ear pressed to the wall, listening to the music. Then she finally walks to the front door and opens it as the music from next door gets louder. In the hallway, Lori sticks her head out the door, listens to the violin music. As she's doing this, she puts the her bag of meds on the ground in the middle of the hallway. She walks to Beverly's apartment and presses her ear against the door. Inside Beverly's apartment, we see that Beverly is playing the violin, seated, facing the window. Now, back in the hallway, Lori is listening to the violin music, her ear pressed to the door, as angry husband from before exits his apartment down the other side of the hallway and whistles towards her like a cat call. Angry husband. Hey, you old hag. You want me to give you an afternoon delight? He starts laughing to himself as she turns and stares towards him anxiously. He then winks at her and laughs, causing her to run into her apartment and slam the door and lock it. Unknowingly, she leaves the bag of meds out in the hallway. So now all her meds are up for grabs. At this point, I don't say how she loses them. It could have been the angry husband. It could have been some kids walking by later and they grabbed her medication. But now she's out of meds for like weeks or months until a new nurse comes to her apartment. So it's kind of a major plot point there. That's why I made this scene, really. I needed to make a way to have her lose her medication like that. All right, now we're moving to that night. As inside Lori's apartment, she's laying on the floor again, this hardwood floor, one eye shut on her bathrobe, rolled up like a pillow. So she's laying on her bathrobe like a pillow with one eye shut and one eye staring towards the TV. On the TV, a scene from the movie Armageddon plays as meteors fall towards New York City. If you can't get the rights to Armageddon, you could use a similar type of scene in any type of show or movie where meteors are headed towards a city. It doesn't have to be Armageddon. That was just in my head because that's kind of a cheesy science fiction movie. It's kind of the opposite of something like this. That's more of a psychological exploration of a character. Lori now shivers as she walks to the window and shuts it, then curls back on the hardwood in a fetal position. Back on the screen, the scene from Armageddon or whatever movie continues as meteors descend towards New York City, or whatever scene you're able to use in this. I don't know how that works. Do you have to get permission to use another movie in the movie you're making? I don't know how this shit works, man. I guess I could Google that later. All right, now we are moving towards Lori's bathroom the next day, as these are very quick scenes, just showing how Lori spends her days and nights alone in her apartment. Her only companion is her television. Lori is stepping out of the shower the next morning, reaching for a towel, hanging on the wall. She bangs her head on the toilet as she slips, and this causes her to pass out on the floor as blood drips onto the floor from a gash on her head. A few hours later, so we would do a time cut here, Lori is waking up confused in the bathroom, a pool of blood around her, She rises from her confused state, stares into the mirror, and she sees flashes of her 5-year-old self reflecting back. So she's starting to lose her mind a little. If you listen to that Oliver Sacks thing about hallucinations, maybe that's where I came up with some of these. I did share his TED Talk, which was pretty good. All right, now we're in a little bit later that day. We're in her apartment as Lori is opening the fridge in the kitchen. All she has left is her empty pickle jar with some pickle juice, some empty cat food cans that she just keeps in her fridge instead of throwing them out, and her orange peel scattered on the shelves. So she's out of food. She opens the pickle jar and drinks the last bit of pickle juice, then turns on the radio. Voice on the radio. Chicago residents prepare for the first snowfall of the season. She now glances out the window towards heavy winds and snowfall. Chicago residents on radio. So they're like interviewing people on the street. And one of the men says, "It's Chicago. You can't handle cold weather. You're in the wrong place." The Beatles, Eleanor Rigby plays on a violin from Beverly's apartment. So now Beverly is playing Eleanor Rigby as Lori presses her ear against the wall and shuts her eyes. Again, I don't know if you're allowed to use a song like that. If you can't, you just have to improvise something else. But Eleanor Rigby, what is that song about? Like, I look at all the lonely people. I don't think you could find a better song to describe the theme of this and Lori's character. So it fits. Hopefully you're allowed to use that. If you play it on a violin, you still have to get royalties or I don't know how it works, man, completely. If it's really just out of the question, then, you just have to think of something else. She's just playing this catchy melody and it grabs Lori's ears. Because I realized putting a Beatles song in a movie or like reimagining it would still cost you a pretty penny. Or in Shrek when they used "And I Saw Her Face, Now I'm a Believer." Is that the Monkees? I don't remember. I think that's the Monkees, right? Who originally wrote that song on Shrek? I don't remember. I think it's the Monkees. "And I saw her face, now I'm a believer. Without a doubt in my mind, I'm in love. Yeah, I'm a believer, I couldn't leave her if I..." That's gotta be the Monkees, right? Didn't they also do "Daydream Believer," though? They got a lot of songs with believers in it. Alright, moving on. At the same time, outside of Lori's apartment, fresh white snow is falling into the sidewalk as cars and pedestrians are beginning to be covered in the white. As the radio continues from inside, voice on the kitchen radio. In international news, the bodies of 11 U.S. soldiers killed this week in insurgent IED attacks are set to be flown home to their families. I just had to think of something relevant to that time period, but that does play a role later because all of these things that Lori is consuming into her head, whether she hears it on the radio or sees it on television or reads it on the news scroll, all those things that I put in this story kind of stay in her mind and they come to life later as like hallucinations. Not to ruin how the story goes, but she's actually pretty normal right now because things get a lot crazier as this story goes. All right, now we're back in space because we haven't been in space in a while, and I figured you have to keep reminding the audience about this underlining theme about your place in the universe. And that conversation could go on forever like I did the last time. So we're drifting through the black void towards a gigantic mass of light energy surrounded by a glistening orange and blue haze. A huge explosion bursts forth as the star explodes into a monstrous fireball, shooting out in all directions. So what am I showing there? I don't even know. Just another about the crazy violence of the universe. It's violence because it kind of seems like no one's in control of anything. That's what I kind of associate when I think about the grandness of the universe. It's just this chaos. Even growing up Catholic in Catholic school, they talk about that, the controlled chaos that uh, in terms of if you believe in the creation theory that God created all this and one little, well, you notice it with climate change. The earth cools by like a tenth of a degree over over a decade, and you'll notice all these crazy effects. And I'm just making up numbers. I don't know the fucking numbers here. But yeah, one little thing and everything could be thrown into complete chaos and the universe could just eat itself, or a giant black hole. So yeah, it's a lot of crazy shit when you think about the universe. It's terrifying, it's beautiful. When you look up at the stars, you're more looking at the beauty and what you think of heaven and all these other concepts that you were taught as a child. But if you actually went into space, like maybe they really did send people to space. We just don't know about it yet. And people already live in space at the space station, right? Maybe they've already sent people to Mars and all this shit. They just didn't want to tell anyone in case some weird shit happened. They don't want the public to know what we're really doing out there. I don't know, man. I'm sure there's some part of government that they like to keep secret from the public for just to keep the calm, I guess. All right. Now we're moving a few days later. We're back inside Lori's apartment. How do you know it's a few days later? I don't know. Maybe there's more snow on the ground now, and it looks more like winter. Because the reason I put snow in that last scene was to show we're moving into wintertime now in Chicago, which is, one of the worst places to be during winter. The main reason I'm moving west, well, also I tried to apply to jobs in like New Orleans and Miami and places like that don't have a winter time. But yeah, you go out west, you probably won't have a bad winter. Although I think Albuquerque actually does have a similar climate. They get some kind of a winter at least. But if you go to Phoenix, Arizona, you're not going to have a winter time. You're in the fucking desert, man. I don't know about parts of California. California is a big place. Regions are different. It's region by region. All right, so we're back in Lori's apartment as she's gazing out the window towards grayish snow. I think that's what I came up with to show it's maybe a few days later. The snow is now that disgusting exhaust color on the roads and sidewalks, and her cat is purring towards her now. Or if you can't get the cat to purr, just show the fucking cat. I don't. Lori opens the fridge, knowing that her cat is hungry. That's her motivation there. She grabs an open can of cat food and scoops out the last remnants into a bowl as her cat immediately chows down. Lori licks the cat food off her fingers and shuts the fridge door. At this point, she's looking kind of bony. Yeah, she's not really eating at all. She's not taking her medication for a couple days now, and she's not really eating much. In that bag, it would have been like a larger bag, not just with her meds, but there's probably food in there and stuff. But I don't know. It's a bad part of the city, and some asshole stole it from her when it was out in the hallway. So she doesn't have food, she doesn't have her meds, and again, she's a hermit. She doesn't have anyone to call or anything. And it's the dead of winter. So later that night, Lori is against the kitchen counter, her zombie eyes staring towards the TV, while a new snow now falls heavily outside. TV on screen. A reality show promo plays similar to Big Brother or Real Housewives. Okay, on the TV is reality show Woman One as she's sitting alone and she's saying, it's like one of those shows like to get people to watch the show, they show all the most controversial clips and stuff like that. I guess the Real Housewives is the real comparison to make here. I don't know why I thought of this. It's just like the pharmaceutical ads, like all the stupid shit on TV. I wanted to include the Jerry Springer type show. This is like the other side of that coin, the Real Housewives. And people still love that shit. I've never seen one episode of that. I'm very proud to say that. I never got sucked into the Real Housewives watching these cunty women beat the fuck out of each other and whatever the hell they do. But I did like the Flavor Flav one. Flavor of Love, that is a classic moment in television history. Flavor Flav, I hope you live another 100 years, buddy. All right, we're on page 27 now. As Lori's watching this reality show, as reality show woman is on TV, and she's going nuts. I told Cordelia 4 times, do not go through my beep. Yeah, this is daytime TV, so you can't curse on TV, right? Reality show woman 2 sits alone. Reality show woman 2 on the TV. This house is going to all hell right now. I don't know why I even signed up for this beat. Cordelia the diva, another character, sits alone. Cordelia the diva. I don't give a beep what they beep say about me. I'm here for me and the beep money. Those other beep bitches can eat my beep. I put bleep there. Is it bleep or beep? Bleep. A clip now plays of Cordelia the diva slapping reality show woman 1 across the face as they wrestle to the ground, pulling each other's hair. Cordelia the diva. Bitch, don't be beep with my bleep hair. The reality show host stands alone in front of the fancy house now. So this is like the end of that promo for this show. Reality show host on the TV. What else can go wrong in a house full of 14 strong independent women? Find out on season 5 of Bitch, You Better Recognize. If there isn't a show called that, well, there should be, because I'd watch that one. Bitch, You Better Recognize. Better. Alright, so this promo is over now, and a breaking news graphic plays as a breaking news anchor sits behind the news desk. He's coming with a fresh story, local news, not really cable news. Alright, he's on TV now, and he's saying, good afternoon, breaking right now in downtown Chicago. Police are on the search for 3 armed men in connection to a shooting at a Griffin's department store earlier this evening. All 3 suspects with known ties to various militia groups throughout the Midwestern region. All right. Yeah, you have to remember, Lori is just consuming all this stuff because the TV is never off. She either has the TV on constantly or the radio. And sad, I kind of connected that. Very rarely do I spend a good hour or 2 in like meditative silence besides sleeping. I always need to have a podcast on or some shit, or doing my Fela Kuti discography exploration, listening to music, or a sports game. I always need like something in the background, so I can relate to this. I think a lot of people can. It's kind of addicted to your screens and everything. A lot of people can't sleep without the TV on or something playing in the background. It's quite odd. Recently, I listened to Flea on a podcast, and he was saying, do not keep your phone in your bedroom. And I was like, holy shit, I was struck by that, because when I first got this new phone, I didn't want to keep it in my bedroom. I made it a point to say I won't have this in my room to distract me with shit. But now it's constantly, that lasted for about a couple of days until I started up writing stuff again. All right, so now the photos appear on the screen of the 3 rough men in army camo carrying rifles, as Lori watches intently, then opens the fridge and stares towards her rotting orange peels on the shelves. She stands there motionless in a catatonic state as the TV continues in the background, as Cordelia the diva now appears in a hallucination behind Lori, staring towards her curiously. So now Cordelia the diva has come to life and is now conversing with Lori near the fridge as a hallucination. Cordelia the diva. You alright there, girl? Looks like you need to get some sun or something. Lori smiles towards the hallucination and casually walks towards the TV, while Cordelia opens the fridge and scans the empty shelves. Cordelia the diva. Oh, hell no, bitch. You better go out and get some snacks and shit. Cool Ranch Doritos or something. Lori turns and stares towards her. Cordelia the diva. And just what the fuck you doing with these rotted orange peels? So some comic relief there as this hallucination of a Real Housewives of wherever the fuck is now a part of Lori's friendship circle of trust. Outside her apartment, more heavy snow is falling as we drift up into the night sky towards the full moon. Now we're going into a dream sequence. This is Lori's dream in space. We're drifting towards dark shadows on the moon's surface. While Lori, she's in her 60s in this dream, floats by in her bathrobe, reaching out towards this spacecraft in front of her. She pushes the spacecraft forward, grabs onto the side, as streaks of bright, colorful light shoots out behind it. So these streaks are shooting out, sending the spaceship into a hyperspeed until it slows around the glorious blue of Neptune. So again, Neptune is a part of this story. I think I picked Neptune because it's supposed to be blue. I hope I'm right about that. Now we're inside the spaceship as Lori's dream continues, and she's removing the gold record from the casing. Back in space, Lori is drifting around Neptune's orbit like a satellite, cradling the gold record in her arms. She's tossing it and watching it drop down on top of Neptune as it spins around faster and faster. So she tosses the gold record at Neptune, and it kind of has an effect like a record playing on a record player. Now, her original composition is playing from the record, that violin piece that she played in the beginning, but it's much more of a electronic type of experience now. As Lori drifts around Neptune's orbit while holding hands with her 5-year-old self. So she's holding hands with her 5-year-old self going around fucking Neptune. It's a pretty trippy dream. It's kind of reminiscent of Big Lebowski, I think. Kind of set up in my head like the way they had that sequence when I guess he passed out and he had that weird dream. I just came in to see what condition my condition is in. I think it's that one. When he's having all those weird visuals and shit. Alright. Now we're back at Lori's studio apartment. She's still sleeping on the hardwood floor in front of the kitchen counter now while her cat purrs by the empty food bowl. She now is slowly waking up, walking to the fridge, staring inside at the rotting orange peels. Quick cut to the bedroom. Lori opens her closet, puts on 3 t-shirts, a knit sweater, a winter coat, a scarf, and a winter hat. Now at the front door, she is standing frozen, her mind racing. As she slowly reaches for the doorknob, only to run into the kitchen in a panic, count the burners on the stove, pulling at each one as she counts. Now she's back at the front door, reaching for the doorknob again. Then she runs back to the kitchen, unlocks the window, pushes it back up, then pushes it down, unlocks it, and then pushes it back. Whatever. She keeps unlocking and locking the window in the kitchen. Then she's back at the front door again, trying to turn the doorknob. But she goes back to the bathroom this time, and she runs in the bathroom, turns on the faucet, turns the faucet off, turns it on, turns it off. Then she turns it on again. Then she's back at the front door and she finally is able to turn the doorknob after some hesitation and walk out the door. So maybe this was her old routine, kind of like a obsessive compulsive thing. She's all fucked up, man. She's got all kinds of weird shit going on besides her hallucinations. But she's not as fucked up to not care about her cat. She's still gonna brave all her fears and her xenophobia, right? Is that what it's called? She's afraid to leave her apartment. I think that's xenophobia. And she still cares enough about her cat to go to the grocery store to get food. So that's her mindset, though. She maybe she hasn't left the actual apartment building in like a decade or something. You have to put yourself in that type of a mindset. So we're out in the hallway now as Lori steps out in her winter gear. The only thing missing is that she forgot to put shoes on, so she has bare feet. She wraps her scarf around her face, leaving only her eyes uncovered, and walks past Beverly's open apartment. She peeks inside towards a painting on Beverly's wall of an angel descending to earth to fight a demon, as Beverly walks in front of the painting and is putting on her ROTC jacket and hat. Lori hallucinates Beverly morphing into a U.S. soldier with a bloodied face and bloody stumps for legs. This soldier hallucination is dragging a machine gun under her arm and crawls towards Lori. So she's picturing Beverly as like a soldier who just got their legs blown off. And now she's like dragging her body towards Lori. So it's kind of a dark scene here. Beverly, as the soldier hallucination, is reaching out her hand, but Lori panics and runs away down the hall. Beverly now is seen as her normal self, and she doesn't even realize that Lori was watching her. So she's just, whatever, she's humming a melody from Gustav Holst's The Planets. Or maybe she did notice Lori. Dun dun dun. Alright. Yeah, so Beverly's like 16 in this, but she's got a much more wide story to come, I guess. Alright. Now, Lori actually leaves the apartment. She's walking on the sidewalk with her bare feet on the snow in her winter gear as other pedestrians are staring curiously towards her. So I don't think she's actually in like downtown Chicago, but maybe one of the suburbs close to the city or whatever location you think works. I'm just speaking hypothetically to the people working on this project. So she loses her balance in the snow. She falls on the sidewalk. She now gazes up and hallucinates all the other pedestrians as waves of colorful electricity, whatever that means. So just like little wavelengths of different colors vibrating around her. And they kind of juke towards her in anxious strides as a loud, piercing buzz echoes loudly, like radio static. She now shuts her eyes tightly, places her hands over her ears, and crawls farther on the sidewalk. So she's having a freak out moment here, but it doesn't stop her from continuing. So she's not completely batty, or whatever you want to call it. That's probably an insensitive term, but she still has some of her sanity left. Now she makes it to the corner store nearby, still in her bare feet. Now they're turning blue in the cold. And she steps towards the front door as a young man shovels the sidewalk, humming a peaceful melody to himself. She hallucinates the young man as Larry, the talk show host. So, however you want to do this, again, it's been done in a lot of different types of science fiction or horror movies where we view the person as normal, we the audience, but in Laurie's mind, this guy shoveling the sidewalk is really Larry from the talk show. And her vision of him as Larry is talking to her. What do you say, Lori? Is the world ready for the next ending? Lori stares at him terrified as he rips his nose clean off his face, exposing his bloodied skeleton. Again, kind of disturbing scenes here. Larry, you'll never guess how the whole thing ends. It kind of turns towards a horror movie a little bit in these scenes. You saw the bloody soldier as Beverly. These are all just things that Lori has consumed. Her only communication, her only knowledge of reality is through television. And that's why she keeps hallucinating these things. She probably wouldn't even know how to speak to another person. She just keeps going down whatever she saw in the news over the last week, whatever it was. So this hallucination of Larry is laughing like a maniac without a nose now and walking towards Lori as other Fraggle-like Muppet creatures are appearing from out of the snow and chanting all together. The Muppets are chanting together, Larry, Larry, Larry. Lori now crouches down against the wall in fear and shuts her eyes as the hallucination reaches out his hand to her. And when she opens her eyes, she sees him now normally as the young man with the shovel. And the young man is saying, "Are you okay, lady?" She opens her eyes and turns towards him, then opens the front door as he returns to shoveling. She finally makes it inside the store after all that shit. And she grabs some cat food off the shelf, cradles the cans under her chin, then walks down another aisle and grabs a jar of pickles. She gazes towards three men in hunting camo shopping nearby, and now she hallucinates these men as the militiamen from the breaking news report with their assault rifles. And these men are walking by her with their weapons by their side as she clings onto the shelf, shielding herself with her eyes shut. Lori opens her eyes and walks down another aisle, where she grabs a few cloves of garlic. An old sickly man is now blowing his nose into a handkerchief nearby. Lori stares at him and hallucinates his nose morphing into a pig snout as he oinks and squirts disgusting mucus all over the floor. Old sickly man. Again, these are hallucinations. These conversations are all in Lori's head. So he's saying, a normal life never promised, a new promised land of recycled, simulated, purposeful nihilism. Pearls before swine, pearls before swine. I don't know what the fuck I wrote there. It's just nonsensical ranting of this man with the pig snout. So she kind of fast walks around this guy in the other direction, holding the scarf tightly pressed to her face as her bare feet leave a trail of wet footprints. She reaches the counter with the cat food and a jar of pickles under her arm and the garlic cloves as the cashier, male in his 40s, eyes her bare feet curiously. The cashier, "You forget something this morning, lady?" Beverly walks inside, opens a bottle of La Pan tomato juice. I don't know why I called it there. I was trying to be symbolic here, and I'll get into that later, I guess. So she grabs this bottle of tomato juice, and she drinks it all pretty quickly. Then she grabs more bottles and walks towards the cashier, who is still kind of staring towards Lori in confusion. "Cashier, lady, you ready to pay for all of that?" Lori is hallucinating his face now as Paul Garrity from the cable news show. So in her head, this cashier turns into Garrity, and Garrity's talking to her. "The mind is a terrible thing to waste, Lori. Laurie stands in shocked silence as the three panelists from his show appear by his side. They're all dancing in unison and singing the chorus of "A mind is a terrible thing to waste" by Don Covey. And these Fraggle type Muppet creatures that we saw outside are also singing along with them. So another very trippy scene, to say the least. It's a good song. If you don't know Don Covey, he's got some cool shit. I became pretty obsessed with one of his albums. I bought one of them on vinyl. But that's a cool song. It's a waltzy type of song. A mind is a terrible thing. Check it out. It's a good, probably from the 70s or 80s. Where am I? Laurie is just standing there, stunned, watching this performance. That's all a complete hallucination. Of course, I don't have to keep saying that, I think. Then she starts to panic and stuffs the garlic cloves in her pockets, grabs everything else, and heads out the door. While the cashier is now back to his normal appearance and is starting to chase after her. Cashier, "Hey, lady!" Outside, moments later, the cashier is out the door. As Laurie is fast walking across the street, barefoot, with cans of her cat food against her chin, a jar of pickles under her arm. So, yeah, it's a funny scene, but you don't want to laugh at somebody who's going through a mental breakdown. So it's kind of weird as well. Cashier, "Hey, lady, you got to pay for all that stuff." Beverly steps out and gets his attention. Beverly, "Hey, I'll take care of it." So they both calmly walk back inside. Moments later, we're farther down the street as Laurie, still barefoot, is walking through the snow. Her cold breath is now visible through her scarf. As she hurries past pedestrians, she fumbles the jar of pickles as it crashes onto the sidewalk, shattering the glass as pickles go everywhere on the snow. She bends down, grabs the pickles off the snow, stuffs them in her pockets, while also cutting her finger on a shard of glass. Now she starts hallucinating that her red blood is morphing into black and white TV static. And from this static, two male hospital orderlies are birthed. So this TV static, however you want to do these special effects, they kind of create these two male hospital orderlies, and it's kind of weird there. I don't know how you would really show that. Her blood turns into static, and then the static somehow gives birth to these two human beings who are dressed like hospital orderlies in a mental asylum or something, and they're rolling a gurney towards her with restraints on top. So she's like running for her life from these people as they chase after her. And the orderlies are talking as one. "Please contact your physician if you experience hallucinations, an identity crisis, Machiavellian gaslighting, or Faustian episodes." So they're kind of doing a pharmaceutical commercial as they chase her. Moments later, we're at a city park as Laurie stops to catch her breath, turning around to make sure no one is following her anymore. So the hallucinations are gone. So she's starting to calm down, and she walks barefoot down a snow-covered path in the public park, carrying the cans of cat food. She's gazing up towards a commercial plane, and now she's hallucinating soldiers jumping out of this plane in formation as they release their parachutes. So you could get kind of crazy with that. Maybe they're like psychedelic soldiers with different colored chutes. Maybe they're spelling something out. I didn't really think about it until right now. You should probably go a little crazy with this. But these soldiers in her mind are jumping out of this plane with parachutes, and she's walking away from this in a panic as the soldiers are now landing on the snow. and all these other confused pedestrians in the park are trying to move away from her because she's acting, kind of crazy. Beverly is watching all of this from a distance with a look of concern as she drinks her bottle of tomato juice. So again, I tried to make Beverly one of those characters that you don't really know what her deal is until later. And I won't ruin that, at least. Now we're drifting through space. I figured this was a good spot to go back into space because Lori is just going out of her mind, hallucinating all this shit as she was just trying to get food at the grocery store and walk back to her apartment. So we're in space now, and we're going very quickly through the solar system, through all the planets. This could be a minute scene if you really want to stretch it out like that. But I wrote it as one sentence. So we're drifting through the solar system very quickly. And we begin to slow down as we view the glorious blue of Neptune. So yeah, Neptune I think is considered a blue planet. I don't know, I guess so. I don't know this stuff. I'm not up to date with my planets or anything. I don't think, well, of course, Mars, but that's like the only one that you kind of know, right? Everyone knows Mars is like the red planet. Anyway, as we get into the nighttime now, we're back in Lori's apartment. She did make it home. And her cat is happily eating from a pile of cat food. So she was heroic. At least she was able to save the cat. Isn't that a screenplay thing? You have to save the cat? Shit. I think there is something like that. A story type of trope. You have to save the cat. I could be wrong. Whatever. She was able to feed her fucking cat. As she has a childish grin on her face. So she's happy about it. And she grabs a pickle from her coat pocket and she bites into it while watching a Batman cartoon on the TV. She walks to a mirror near the front door and she hallucinates bat wings growing out of her back with ornate, intricate black markings along the outer borders like Egyptian writing. She flaps her bat wings. So now we're viewing Lori as she views herself. She's flapping her bat wings around and she's flying around the apartment. Almost like, you know what this is? This is the... Shit, what's his name? Man, who played Batman? I'm so bad with actors' names, man. I'm Batman. Who was the original Batman? He's a famous actor. I just can't think of his fucking name. Let me take a break here. Michael Keaton. Yeah, alright. At least I still had some memory left in my brain. Michael Keaton was in that movie, what, Birdman or some shit? Michael Keaton. What was that called? That movie was good. Yeah, Birdman. 2014 movie. I gotta watch that again. It was really good. It's kind of like that Black Swan movie. But different director, Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. Sorry, man, I don't know how to say her name. But yeah, there's a scene in that at the end where he thinks he's a bird and he like flies out the fucking window. I think that's probably what I'm going for here. Lori's hallucinating this shit. She thinks she's growing fucking bat wings, which is related to my personal experience during COVID. I was going through weird shit. That kind of, I could really relate to that. That's why I wrote that, of course. I had some weird moments in 2020 where weird shit was going on like that. Where, yeah, I was having like antichrist delusions and shit. Some crazy shit like that. So that's definitely why I wrote this scene. Because I'm kind of putting my own personal experiences into this now. So she's flapping her bat wings, flying around the apartment. I never did that. I didn't go that crazy. And she's smiling wide as she now morphs into her 5-year-old self. So we view her as her 5-year-old self, then back to normal again. Cordelia the Diva returns to give some comic relief here and watches Lori curiously from the kitchen sink. as she's washing her hair. Cordelia the Diva. So Cordelia the Diva is washing her hair in the kitchen sink, and she's looking over to Lori, who's flying around the apartment with bat wings. So, yeah, you got to do a lot of special effects here. There is some CGI shit that would probably have to happen. Cordelia the Diva. Have you been taking your meds, girl? Now, Lori, in this hallucination, she's flying right out the window now. Now, outside, snow is falling into the sidewalk, and we're drifting up the building towards Lori's window, where she's now hanging upside down like a bat, while falling snow is being caught, or she's catching the falling snow with her tongue like a child would. All right, we're getting deep into this now. Now she's, yeah, of course, she wasn't taking her medication. I don't know if the medication is the reason she's freaking out this much, because she hasn't taken any of it for a couple of days. Or maybe I was trying to say something different. Like a lot of people say the medication can restrict a person's creativity or imagination, and you become a zombie like a Stepford wife or man or a Stepford husband. You become a brainless, emotionless ward of the state, like in Brave New World, and you just become happy to be in your zombie state. Now, I don't want to say too much more than that, because also you don't want people to have these freak out moments and hallucinations, but I don't know enough about these psychological, psychiatric disorders to speak intelligently about it. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. I've heard artists say that, like, they don't want to take certain medication because they think it's going to affect their ability to create art and stuff like that. A lot of people have different opinions on psychiatry, on pharmaceutical drugs, and stuff like that. I'm just going to leave it there. I think I spoke enough about this in the first part to get people would know where I stand on a lot of this stuff. So I'm not going to go into that again. But Lori is completely freaking out at this point. Whatever she has, that living like a hermit for 3 decades probably didn't help her. Living on this medication, dependent on it, probably made it worse, because she never got to deal with the issue of everything, which is her son's death. She's been living with that guilt, covering it up, hiding it, masking it, living through other people on the television, on the radio, reality television, which isn't real. The cable news, which is a lot of times full of bullshit. And that's how she's created this new psyche inside of her. It's built on bullshit. Not her fault, really, but she never came to terms with that one tragic night where her son died. And that's the root cause of it all. The medication might have made her feel numb and comfortable, but it wasn't really getting to the root of her problems, at least. Kind of like why people will get addicted to pain pills. Athletes like Brett Favre, he had a story like that. It's why a lot of people want marijuana legal, so athletes could possibly heal themselves through less addictive, less potent opiate-based medication. And pills are easier to take. You start taking pills, it's just like taking candy, you know? So pills are, I don't know if I'm not correct saying that, but they're probably even more dangerous of a drug if you abuse it, because they're so easily ingested. But again, I don't want to talk too much about pharmaceutical stuff. I talked about it to death already in the first part. So we leave that scene at night. Lori's still hanging like a bat outside her apartment window, and she's catching the falling snow with her tongue. Next day, we're in the apartment hallway, is Lori is walking out again barefoot into the hallway, wearing just a t-shirt and pants, and she leaves her door wide open. Moments later, out on the city street, a light snow is falling. We're in the middle of winter in Chicago, so it's probably freezing cold out. And Lori is still barefoot on the sidewalk, wearing just a t-shirt and pants. Beverly is walking nearby and watches Lori walk away farther on the sidewalk as she's tightening up her coat. All right. Now we're back at that city park in the daytime. Lori is walking barefoot through the snow. Then she's sitting down at a public piano in the park. She's attempting to play her original melody, that violin piece that she played in the beginning that was sent up to space. That's why I said I needed somebody to compose a really memorable melody here, because it's throughout this movie, it's almost like her, what does clarion call mean? I was going to say that, but I don't even know what the fuck that means. Clarion call is kind of like what? Like a siren? Fuck, I should know that. I don't know what it means. Clarion call. Well, we're going to learn now. What is a clarion call? Google. Please help me, Google. A clarion call is a metaphor for a loud, clear, and urgent appeal or demand for action, like a wake-up call. So that kind of works. You could say whoever composes this short little violin piece that becomes an electronic composition, that becomes a piano part here, it is kind of like a clarion call, if I'm using it correctly. It's like a wake-up call. Maybe she's trying to wake herself up in that way. But whatever you want to call it. She's playing the piano and she's playing this beautiful kind of haunting melody. And in this very public park, it's just a piano in the middle of the park that anyone can use. That's what I'm going for. And yeah, so it is important to compose something that would be memorable. She's struggling to play this in the bitter cold as her fingers are kind of like, going frostbite. It's coming into effect, and she's barely able to hit the keys. Beverly again is watching her from the distance as Lori's frail, nearly frostbit hands are now resting on top of the piano keys. We head back to space now as a large meteor is drifting through the black void, while colorful streaks of light emerge from a wormhole and shine onto it, painting it like a tie-dyed shirt. Now we're inside Lori's apartment that night. So she made it back to her apartment after her brief concert in the park that didn't last very long, because it's fucking Chicago and it's probably like 10 below zero. Inside Lori's apartment that night, she builds a fort in her kitchen made from her suitcase, clothing, and random blankets and towels. And this fort is against the fridge and the kitchen counter. And she now is resting inside like a child, cradling the kitchen radio, voice on the radio. As the first blizzard of the season heads our way, officials also warn of morning delays and advise all to prepare for loss of power and to stock up on food and water. Lori crawls out of her fort onto the kitchen floor, where she pricks the top of her index finger with a broken piece of glass. Again, there's a symbolism of the blood here. Her red blood is dripping out of her finger, and she's coloring a circle on the kitchen floor with the blood. Now she's going to prick another one of her fingers, and blue blood is now dripping from her finger as she colors a blue circle on the kitchen floor. Now she pricks another finger, and yellow blood is dripping out of this finger, and she's coloring in a yellow circle on the kitchen floor. And she continues, she pricks another finger. So it's almost like every time she pricks one of her fingers, even though her blood is going to be red, in her head they're like different colors of paint, these bright colors, and she starts painting on her kitchen floor with her blood. A few hours later, this is just a time cut. Now Laurie is covered in sweat and she's finishing coloring in a silver circle on the kitchen floor with the tip of one of her fingers. So she rises and she views her kitchen floor painting, her mural, smiling with a childlike glee, like she just spent hours working in a coloring book. Like she's kind of going back to maybe her lost childhood, or I don't know. I don't really know where I was going with that angle, but off her medication, yeah, she's kind of going back to her 5-year-old brain, I guess. I guess that makes sense. That happens to a lot of people as they get older. They kind of go back to that very juvenile type of worldview. So in her mind, this painting on the floor is now coming to life. And she's hallucinating all these colorful circles as planets, shooting stars, meteors, and all these other moons around the planets. And all of these colorful circles are coming to life all around her, like she's walking in her kitchen, but now she's walking through space. So it's a pretty important scene. You could get as artistic as you want with it. Her kitchen is now transforming into space, which goes back to some of the other themes I was talking about earlier. So she's gently reaching out and grabbing at these planets around her. She grabs Neptune in the palm of her hand and holds the planet up over her head like she's a god, like holding a planet in her hand. Next door in Beverly's apartment, Beverly is playing a violin piece from Gustav Holst again, The Planets, on her violin, and she's facing out her window as the snow falls. Back in Laurie's apartment, Laurie is pressing her ear up against the wall as she still holds Neptune in her hand, and she's listening to the violin music. Now Neptune starts to glow this really beautiful shade of blue in her hand, and she's smiling and laughing and jumping up and down like a child. While back in Beverly's apartment, she plays more of her violin piece from Gustav Holst. So these are just quick cuts back and forth. There is a connection between Beverly and Laurie, but we don't know what it is yet. Now, back in Laurie's studio apartment, a little bit later in the night, she's grabbing her violin case from the windowsill. She was probably inspired by hearing Beverly play it. She's blowing off the dust off the case, walks towards the TV, and she smashes the TV screen with her violin case. And now she hallucinates sparks of different colored light exploding out from the cracked screen as these lights splatter all over her walls in chaotic, colorful swirls and different designs. Random chaos. Maybe this is kind of similar to The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, that Ben Stiller movie. I think I remember reading that story as a kid. It was a pretty good movie. Kristen Wiig, Ben Stiller, and Sean Penn. I don't know if there's anybody else in that one. But yes, I watched that maybe because of this screenplay. I wanted to get some inspiration. And he's not really hallucinating in that, is he? The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I think he just kind of has a crazy imagination about things. It's similar to how you would film these scenes through Laurie's mind as it devolves. Is that the right word? Devolves back to a 5-year-old child. And now she has her crazy imagination back. That whatever drug she was taking probably made her feel normal and numb, but maybe it took away her creativity and her ability to feel things. So now it's going completely the other way, and she's hallucinating every 5 seconds something else. All right, now we're back in Beverly's apartment. Where were we? Sorry, I lost my place here. Okay, so she just smashed her TV, and she's seeing all these colorful swirls that came from smashing it. All these colors came out of her TV all over her plain white walls. Back in Beverly's apartment at the same time, she's playing more of her violin piece from the planets. And that's just a quick cut. And then we go back to Lori in her apartment, and now she's sleeping on the kitchen floor. Or she's just laying down on the kitchen floor, staring up towards her magical solar system in motion as all these planets revolve around her. All right, you could end the scene there that night. The next morning, Lori wakes up on the floor, completely disheveled, her hands and clothing covered in blood because she was poking her fingers. What she thought was a colorful kitchen floor is just red chaotic circles everywhere. She's not hallucinating anymore. She thought all these colorful paint colors were coming out of her fingers. It was just red blood. So now we see it. She also notices it. All right. And she realizes that she broke the TV, and she finds all the remnants of the TV screen all over the floor. So I guess it's one of those old type of televisions that actually could break into shards, not like the new ones, the flat screens. I guess that wouldn't really work. But again, this is probably the early 2000s, before televisions like that were more common in people's apartments. All right, let's continue here. There's about maybe 7 pages left. Now, she crawls back inside her kitchen fort, and she carries some of the broken TV pieces with her. She curls up inside with the television screen remnants cradled in her arms like a teddy bear, and she begins to sob loudly like she just lost her best friend. So then she turns the kitchen radio on from her kitchen fort of solitude. The voice on the radio: the Chicago Orchestra performs Gustav Holst's The Planets this spring season. Purchase your tickets today. So it's just a commercial on the radio for Gustav Holst's The Planets. All right, now we're in the hallway moments later, as Lori, with her hair looking even crazier than ever, is knocking on Beverly's door. Beverly opens the door wearing a cozy hoodie. As Lori holds out the broken pieces of the TV screen, she stomps her feet like a child having a tantrum, and then drags Beverly out into the hallway, leading her into her apartment. When Beverly goes into Lori's apartment, okay, this is maybe minutes later, Beverly is inside Lori's apartment now, and she's sweeping up all the pieces of the broken TV screen into a dustpan. As Lori is leaning against the kitchen tower watching her, like Beverly was a TV show. So she's going back to that mode of she doesn't know how to experience reality, so she just views everything like a TV show. All right, so now Beverly grabs Lori's violin case off the floor, blows off the dust, opens it up, and pulls out the violin. Beverly: this is really beautiful. I play some too, you know. Lori stares towards an angelic glowing wing protruding out of the bottom of Beverly's hoodie. Beverly, I can come over and play for you sometime if you want. Beverly puts the violin back into the case, then bends over to dump the TV remnants into the trash. As Lori walks over and reaches out towards the glowing wing, but fails to grasp it as Beverly stands. Beverly, I'll be right back. She walks past the solar system painting that's really just that random chaotic blots of Lori's blood. I don't know when you want to reveal that. You could reveal it here, or because maybe Lori wouldn't even remember all that shit. So maybe it's better when she wakes up earlier in that scene, she doesn't even see it, and we don't see it either until that moment. Lori thought she was making this majestic, colorful mural the night before, but now we realize she's out of her mind, and she was really just cutting her fingers and using her blood to make all these crazy circles on her kitchen floor. So maybe it's better to show that there as Beverly's walking by it. Now, Beverly's in the hallway. She's carrying the trash bag down the hall. Like, this is moments after she just left Lori's apartment. Lori sticks her head out into the hallway and gazes towards her as a little more of her wing is sticking out of her hoodie. So she's wondering, well, Lori doesn't know. She doesn't know what the fuck is up, but the audience is like, is Lori hallucinating this angelic wing, or is Beverly really some kind of angel? She doesn't fucking know, and the audience would be confused at this point too, which is good. It's supposed to be like that. It gives it a little bit more intrigue to finish this story now. Alright, now we're back in space as we go through the black void once again as a swirling mass of blue, green, and yellow light merges into the shape of an eyeball. Now we're back in Lori's studio apartment at night. And from that shot of the eyeball in space of all these different colors, we're now drifting away from Lori's eyeball. So you could match those shots if you'd like, or film it somehow else, but that's how I see it. Lori's eyeball, because of that whole theme I keep repeating, that there's a universe inside of us and a universe, outside of us. Lori is sitting against the kitchen counter, staring at the blank back wall where the TV used to be. Suddenly, all these colorful lights shoot out from her eyes and project onto the wall, like she was flipping through TV channels every time she blinks her eyes. So that's the effect I'm going for here. She doesn't have her TV companion anymore, so now she's making it up herself. Every time she blinks her eyes, different images would appear on the back wall. Almost like she is a human projector. So as she blinks her eyes, there's a projection on the wall of a war zone as bombs are falling from planes and buildings are collapsing. She blinks her eyes again, and now against the wall there's a projection of a commercial playing to help starving children. And there's a voice now from the projection. For only 79 cents a day, a child can eat 3 full meals. She blinks her eyes again, as now a projection plays of pigs on a farm eating their own filth. Lori's eyes blink again, as now a projection plays of meteors buzzing by Earth from a science documentary. Voice from the projection. The meteors are called the Perseids. I think that's how you say that. Perseids. Due to the relation to the constellation Perseus. I probably looked that up back then. I don't even remember at this point. Lori's eyes blink again. Now a projection plays of Garrity's cable news show. So again, yeah, I was so addicted to Garrity's character. Right after I wrote this story, I think I was like, man, I got to make an episode with Paul Garrity. So I probably made a note of that at that point. because he's like such a cool character. So now her next projection from her eyeballs is another episode of Paul Garrity's news show from cable news. And he's got his usual 3-person panel with him. And Garrity is going to lead this conversation here. Scientists were supposedly unable to detect the meteor due to its emergence from behind the sun. This is it, Lori. Buckle up. We are going the way of the dinosaur. The 3 panelists are now talking over each other as Garrity walks off the set and the ending show music plays. Panelist 1. This is all because of the Republicans' refusal to accept climate change. Panelist 2. Here we go again with the liberal revisionist history. Panelist 3. Can I just say that we need to all come together during times like these? Panelist 1. Climate change deniers have put this country in the crosshairs of total Armageddon. Panelist 2. This is because of homosexuality and the breaking down of the family unit. Panelist 3. Can I get a word in, please? Can I please? Panelist 3 loses his patience, throws the mic down, and storms off the set. Panelist 3. Fuck this shitty gig. I went to Juilliard, motherfuckers. I'm just picturing like a scene like that would be pretty funny. Like if all of these panelists on these cable news shows, they are kind of like actors in a way. And one of them just gets fed up one day and storms off the set. Like that Dylan Ratigan dude from MSNBC. There was one episode of him where he just kind of rants about all the corruption in politics. This would be something similar. Like this one panelist guy, he never gets a word in, and so he just gets really angry and storms off the set. He's like, man, I went to fucking Juilliard. I should be doing way better than this fucking shitty show or whatever. But again, these are all hallucinations from Lori's eyeballs. But you know, I had to put my own 2 cents into this shit. All right, so now another projection plays now of a female violin player playing a haunting piece from Gustav Holst's The Planets. Again, we go back to that song. Lori places her hand out in front of her eyes as the colorful beam of lights shine upon her hair or her hand now, like she was streaming her projections onto a cell phone. Maybe that's a bit of foreshadowing. If I'm writing this story, I set this story in the early 2000s, like 2005, 2006, something around that. And I don't think people had smartphones to a high degree yet. Maybe they did. I didn't get my first cell phone until, I don't know, early 2000s, after college, probably around that time. And it was a flip phone. I didn't get a smartphone until way later at work. I got a BlackBerry, and then they gave us smartphones later. But yeah, so maybe in 2005, people weren't addicted to their phones yet to the way they are now. So I'm kind of playing fortune teller here, even though, you know, we already experienced all this shit. I'm not really playing Nostradamus, predicting how people will be addicted to their fucking phone screens for navigation, for entertainment, for pornography, for information, for news, for propaganda, social media, dopamine, all this shit. Everything in your fucking hand at your fingertips. You know, it's a different reality we live in today. I picture like kids playing baseball. Like I played baseball as a kid and I was terrible, but you know, I picture kids today in the outfield with like their phones in their pocket, like looking at their phone between pitches. I'm sure they don't do it, but that's kind of dangerous too. But... All right, so that's a pretty technical scene. You have to show all these bright lights coming from her eyeballs out onto the sidewall, and she's like making up her own television shows in her brain based on what she watched in the past. Or just her general insanity. also just known as your imagination. But how do you show that on screen? You have to come up with some gimmick like that. I think it's a cool idea. She was so addicted to these characters on these TV shows that she's able to bring them to life again through her imagination. All right, we're moving on from that scene now. And we're going back to the city park outside as more snow is falling. So we're still in the midst of winter in Chicago. We're just doing an establishment shot of this scene in the city park as more snow is falling over that piano. We go back to Laurie's apartment now. Again, during a scene like that, you could play some music and extend it, make it some kind of a musical response, either from a Laurie Spiegel thing or Gustav Holst, whatever really fits there. I really just wanted to show the piano again and to show that it's still snowing all the time. We're back in the morning now in Laurie's apartment as she sleeps in her blanket fort. And knocks are pounding from her front door. She wakes up, walks towards the door, stares through the peephole, and she sees Beverly in her hoodie as Beverly's knocking again. Laurie finally opens the door after some hesitation, and Beverly walks in with her violin. Beverly, hey, figured I could play a little for you. Remember, Beverly's like a 16-year-old girl here, so it's kind of weird already for Beverly to keep forming this relationship with this 60-year-old woman, unless she's just like a saintly woman. Beverly, like, how many 16-year-old kids would want to spend time with their crazy, eccentric neighbor who's kind of fucking insane? So it's something's off here. I think the audience would be like, what's up with this storyline? Laurie just stares at her blankly, still waking up. Beverly, since we might be snowed in for a while and all. Again, you notice here, I didn't mention this whole time, but has Laurie had any dialogue? No, I don't think she has. Since that first scene when she was in her 20s in college, I don't think she's had one line of dialogue. It's all just acting through her facial expressions. You have to find a different way to tell her story. She's not saying a word this whole movie, but she's the main character. I think that's a cool angle that I didn't intend to do, but that's what it became. Imagine having a feature film as a lead actress and you have barely any dialogue at all. I don't know if the actress would like it or not, but it's, that's how the story came. It's how a character like her might respond to living like this. All right. So Beverly's trying to play some music for her, and Laurie's leading her into the kitchen, through the kitchen fort, out the other side, where Beverly leans by the window and plays another classical piece from Gustav Holst, The Planets. Laurie listens to her in a daze while staring towards her violin case on the windowsill. She's starting to remember stuff, or remember how she used to play the violin as well. Now we're out to space again. We're going through space in hyperspeed, passing through all these colorful beams of light. And yeah, I would play some Laurie Spiegel music here. I had the song Old Wave selected as a recommendation. You could pick anything. You listen to Laurie Spiegel music and it does feel like you're floating in space sometimes. And so this is Laurie's daydream days montage as she's listening to the violin. She's in space and excuse me. All right, see, these are like quick memories flashing in her head of Laurie and Jacob are on the rooftop gazing up towards the stars on that night when he engaged or proposed to her. Now she's in her 60s with her disheveled hair, bare feet, and she's playing a violin solo on a fancy orchestra stage. Now she is playing a huge synthesizer. Maybe she's in her 30s here, as the reel-to-reel spins behind her faster and faster. Now she's in her 30s and Laurie's playing a violin solo on a fancy orchestra stage. Now Laurie is driving down a city street, her 4-year-old son in the passenger seat. She reaches for the volume knob and swerves into the next lane. So she's having another flashback of that death scene where she crashed the car. Now she's seeing the gold record casing inside the spacecraft spinning faster and faster. Now Laurie is giving birth to Jacob, and she's holding him in her hands after the doctor hands her the baby. Now 5-year-old Laurie is playing a violin solo on a fancy orchestra stage, and now we are returning to the very first scene of this script, which was in space, as the slow swirling streaks of colors of every possible shade emerge through a wormhole and merge into a whirlpool of intensely bright light energy. These streaks of light spin in a circular motion, faster and faster, like a vinyl record, lighting up the black void. Then the Big Bang. That's the end of this montage. I think when I wrote that scene, I was like, maybe the Big Bang came from a black hole, like a different dimension opened up, and all of these particles that we call life came out of this black hole, and just, that was the Big Bang at that point. I don't know, man. I don't know why I wrote it like that. That's kind of a cool image, though. The visuals are there. I just don't really know what I'm talking about in terms of quantum theory or shit like that. That's how the universe started. There was a big black hole, and remnants of another dimension or time came through the black hole, and all these things collided and started expanding out. That's how it happened, don't you know? I just solved everything. You don't need to question it anymore. I just solved all the questions right there. Yeah. I don't know. It would look cool on screen, though, at least. You see this black hole opening up out of nothingness, and then you get to experience the Big Bang like that. That's kind of cool. All right, moving on. Only a couple pages left. I'm on page 41 now. Inside Laurie's apartment, the same time before this montage, Beverly is finishing up her violin piece from the planets as Laurie's eyes begin to water. Beverly places the violin down and hugs her. Beverly, whispering into her ear, just relax and go with the flow. Beverly grabs Laurie's violin out of the case and plays a perfect rendition of the original composition that went to space, while Laurie stares towards her in shock. Like, how the fuck do you know my original violin composition that probably nobody fucking knows? And then Laurie passes out onto the floor as Beverly places the violin back in the case and then lifts Laurie off the floor and carries her out the front door. So right there, I'll be kind of like, what the fuck's happening now? How does this 16-year-old girl know Laurie's composition? How was she able to play it just like Laurie played it in the beginning scenes in the kitchen from, what was that, 50 years ago at this point, in the 70s? So a lot of shit's happening now to end this story. It's got kind of a Spielberg type of sentimental ending. Inside Beverly's apartment now, later that night, or now we're moving to the night, sorry. We were in the daytime until now. Now it's nighttime. We're in Beverly's apartment. Laurie is waking up on a couch, kind of disoriented. She doesn't know where she is. She sits up and views a painting on the wall of Icarus flying towards the sun. Yeah, I know that's a cliche type of thing, but it makes sense. It fits this story. Icarus's path towards the sun. It fits this story. Like I know a lot of people use that symbolism all the time, but it just fits. I just had to use it myself. There's a reason people use it, I guess. It's such a good metaphor for a lot of themes that I'm talking about. All right, so now Lori wakes up. She walks down this hallway past two small bedrooms. Everything is void of furniture as a violin plays her original composition outside. So she's kind of stunned at this point. Where am I now? Okay, outside on the sidewalk, Beverly is walking and playing Lori's original song that she composed all those years ago. And she's walking on the sidewalk, playing it on the violin as more snow gently falls. As more snow gently falls to the ground. We go back to space as the spacecraft is drifting into a supermassive black hole at this point. The spacecraft that had the gold record inside, it's going inside a huge black hole. Back on Earth, Lori is walking barefoot through the snow, following the violin music of Beverly. She's gazing up towards the stars, and she hallucinates meteors descending down like fireballs as they plow into buildings, streetlights, and parked cars. She walks a little bit farther through. All right, so all this chaos is happening. These meteors are falling on the city and just completely wrecking shit, like in a movie Armageddon or some shit like that. And Lori isn't fazed by it. She's just walking calmly through all this violence. And she's just so mesmerized by the violin music in the distance. I think that would be a cool look. Like, usually she would be freaking out as if she's hallucinating this. But at this point, she's very calm and collected. And she's just mesmerized by this haunting music that she composed. Now she heads towards the city park a little bit later, following the violin music to the public piano, where this violin music, we don't know where it's coming from, it abruptly stops as more meteors descend in the background. And she sits down at the piano in the park and she plays that same melody as more fairy tale like snow falls down on her. The reason I said Winona Ryder is because I kept picturing that scene in Edward Scissorhands, where, she's like dancing in the snow at the end and at nighttime. Like it is like a fairy tale type of story. Back in space, the spacecraft is rattling violently inside the black hole, engulfed by colorful streaks of light. Then it emerges as a tidal wave of colors, entering Earth's orbit. So the spacecraft somehow makes it back to Earth after 50 years of exploring the universe. It goes inside this black hole, and now it's transformed as these waves of bright colors back entering Earth's orbit after this voyage of the Voyager. Back at the city park, snow is falling even heavier as Lori sits at the piano playing more of her song, and she's now lit up majestically by this bright beam of colorful light from above. Back down a side street nearby, all the cars that are parked on the street suddenly turn on as different frequencies play on each car radio, creating a total mishmash of chaotic static, music, and voices. So it's kind of a magical Green Mile type of moment. I don't even think I've seen that movie, but I think there's something like that with the Green Mile. with Tom Hanks and that dude. I can't think of his name. But yeah, it's just a very E.T. type of ending to pull at people's heartstrings at this point. Like, what the fuck's happening? The meteors were all a hallucination, but is this real? Is Laurie just made up? What the fuck's happening now? Alright, is this whole movie just one big hallucination? People aren't going to really know what's happening at this point, as all these cars that are parked on the street just come to life and the car horns start honking, car alarms go off, radios start playing random music and voices. After a few seconds of all this chaotic noise, the car radios all synchronize together and play Laurie's original composition in unison. Like, every radio station is now playing her music. All right, now we go back to the park where Beverly is walking towards Laurie as she plays more on the piano. Beverly removes her hoodie, freeing her long angelic wings that are now glowing. She's now appearing as this kind of very tall, towering, glowing guardian angel type. And she's flapping her wings. She flies over the park while Laurie gazes towards her majestic flight. Is this really happening? Is this a hallucination? Beverly lands right behind Laurie and now transforms herself into Laurie's 4-year-old son, who hands Laurie her violin. So now Beverly somehow mutated into Laurie's dead son as a 4-year-old coming back to life. And Laurie joyfully grabs his hand while she stops playing the piano, grabs his hand, and they both ascend into the night sky together. So yeah, shit's getting weird now. So she reunites with her son after, 50 years since his death, and they're going back, ascending into the night sky together. We head into space as Laurie drifts towards the sun, holding her violin. Then her body disintegrates into this bright white light. The light scatters outwards into the black void, birthing new stars that form a constellation of a woman playing a violin. So, like, back to Stardust. There's a part in the Bill Nye short video when he talks about the golden record where he's like, everyone is just made of stardust. So that she's going back to that form of matter. She's leaving her body. She ascended into the fucking heavens, into space, whatever you want to call it. And her body will forever be a part of the universe now as this constellation, this new constellation. I think that was a cool, fitting end for her. Now we get to the next morning in the city park as Laurie's dead, emaciated body sits at the piano, covered in snow, frozen solid like a statue, like a sculpture of stone. As we drift high above this peaceful, wintry morning into the light snowfall. So, yeah, her body became like this statue. I know that sounds really weird. It's almost like a punishment in the Bible. If you do something to offend the gods, then some witch will turn you into snow, or not into stone, I mean, sorry. That's in a couple Old Testament stories, right? That's in Indiana Jones. Don't look at the Ark of the Covenant or you'll get, your body will disintegrate into nothingness. Or if you turn around, you'll get turned into stone because of this biblical witchcraft. So, but it's not a punishment in this case. I just thought that would be cool. Laurie, she was able to free herself from the madness she was going through. With the help of Beverly, who was like her guardian angel, she was able to return to her original existence before she became a person. She was stardust. So she goes back to space and she goes back to how she started, and she forms this everlasting constellation, just like Orion's belt or all these other constellations. Who knows what happens in the future, but I think that's a cool way to end her story. I think it gives her closure and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, but her body remains in the park. So people would come by this piano, and this is the scene I kind of end this with. A few months later, as the winter is now over, Laurie's statue is still at the piano. The statue of stone that kind of looks like her is sitting at the piano as it's beautifully lit up by this early morning sunlight. So we're probably in springtime now. While some pedestrians are walking by, enjoying spring's rebirth as birds sing and trees celebrate their new life. So all these people, they just think she's a statue at this point. So this young couple sits down at the piano with Laurie's statue in between them, and they're snapping pictures with their cell phone. So people just think, oh, I guess the city must have made a statue here. Because what's your body in reality? Your body is just a cage. I talked about this in the other one, in the first episode. So it's kind of harking back to that. Your body is just a vessel for your thoughts, your consciousness, your whatever else you think you're composed of, your stardust. All right, a little bit later, we are now drifting through the clouds as superimposed in the sky is the rest of that quote that we began with. Roughing them up here and smoothing them there, and pushing and pulling areas of sonic fabric up, down, towards and away, together and apart. The last scene would be in space, because why not? As the spacecraft is now drifting past Laurie's constellation, almost like she's reuniting with her music. And superimposed would be what might be the variables with which we interact, in what dimensions might we move. And you could write Laurie Spiegel at the end of that, since it's her quote. Should I read that whole quote? Let me see if it makes more sense if I read the whole quote. Hold on one second, I need to go back to the beginning. That quote begins with, "We entered this story in space, in the black void, with nothing, just black, nothing else but black." And superimposed was the beginning of that quote. "Will we be able to move our hands through the space around us, shaping the sounds as we listen?" And then I bookend this script, this story, with the last part of that quote. What might be the variation? Sorry, that's the wrong part. Roughing them up here and smoothing them there, and pushing and pulling areas of sonic fabric, up, down, toward and away, together and apart. What might be the variables with which we interact? In what dimensions might we move? Laurie Spiegel. I forget where I found that, but it was some newspaper article I found online. An interview with Laurie Spiegel about electronic music and other, how the music kind of connects to consciousness and experiences through your life, I guess, and stuff like that, that maybe she can speak about more. I don't want to make shit up that she made this quote out of something. So yeah, I forget exactly the context of it, but I liked how it sounded. And the ending of it, what might be the variables with which we interact and stuff like that. All right, so that's the end. As the credits go down, I would have Laurie Spiegel, The Expanding Universe, that song playing, since she's a big part of this story. All right, so I don't know if everything's clear. The character of Beverly, I had to kind of find a way. I think in the beginning I just didn't even have her, and the story would just end the same way, with Laurie ascending into space with her son, but it didn't make sense. I didn't like it enough. I didn't think it was as memorable. So I made this character Beverly, and then I added all those other scenes of her playing the violin. And then the audience is going to be like, what the hell is the deal with this teenage girl doing all this shit? And you notice Laurie's like hallucinating all of these things around her. And then you see the one scene with Beverly and her wings are coming out of her hoodie. And is it another hallucination? Is she really some kind of alien or some shit? Are aliens and angels the same thing? And all those weird ancient alien things. There's a connection to that because I was into that. I think I read the Book of Enoch a little bit after this when I was writing another screenplay with I won't get to that till maybe episode 11, but I think Beverly actually returns in some of those stories. So yeah, I like this story. I still think it's worthy of being made. I think it has an honesty to it. It has a cool, number one, it has a cool role for an actress, an older actress, or somebody like Winona Ryder's not old, but if you make her look like a 60, 70-year-old, she could pull this off pretty cool. Or an older actress that wants to have a role like this that has no dialogue. Everything you do has to be even more pertinent to the story and the character. So it's a challenging role, but also kind of interesting how you would play the role of Laurie, who doesn't speak one line of dialogue, and you still need to connect her to the story and have the audience root for her through your facial expressions and how you act out these scenes. So it's kind of cool. I can't relate it to anything else. I can't think of anything else right now of movies that don't have a lot of dialogue. Or, well, there was the one recently, The Quiet Place, right? Because they didn't want to get killed by those monsters or whatever. So the whole movie was kind of like no dialogue at all. There's other ones too that I just can't think of right now. But yeah, I think that gets the message across. The character of Beverly has very few doesn't have much dialogue either, but it's kind of a cool role for a young up and coming actress. And that's really all there is. Everything else is very minor. The story's weird. There's not a lot of casting required. You have a couple supporting characters in the beginning of this. Then you have really the main way this would be a successful episode is how the CGI would be handled and the graphics showing all these moments in space and stuff like that. That would carry the temperature of this story and how the audience reacts to it. I'm not a science nerd. Like, I appreciate that stuff. I'll listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson or that Michio guy. I always forget his name. He's like a Japanese quantum theory or quantum physics, something like that. He's got a bunch of books on like quantum computing, and he's been on Joe Rogan a couple times. Neil deGrasse Tyson. I appreciate that nerdy stuff. Even the Bill Nye, I mentioned him before. I watched that as a kid. Remember Nickelodeon had the Wizard or Mr. Wizard or some shit like that. Mr. Wizard. He used to do all those stupid science experiments. So I appreciate that science nerdy stuff, but this is more of a connecting science fiction with the spiritual side, because why not? People think religion and science have to be enemies or that they don't align correctly. Well, my religion says the earth is only 4,000 years old, and then science says that the earth is 10 billion years old, idiot. sometimes the conversation goes like that. It's like, you believe in creation theory? Well, what do you believe in? We were evolved like monkeys and we came from apes and shit. There's the scene in Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Mac is arguing against evolution. He's a science bitch. That's a pretty good episode. Look, it doesn't have to be like that. Science and religion kind of are enemies because I guess there were people that got put to death, like Galileo. Oh, you think the sun is the center of the universe? Motherfucker. And then the Catholic Church like killed the dude. Or, I don't know, who else? I don't know. I can't think of other people. That's the one I always think of, but it can be considered heresy, yeah, if you go against the Bible as a scientist back 200, 300 years ago, or whatever the fuck it was, then you're a heretic and you're probably going to be put to death or whatever. So I guess there's some reason why there's a divide between religious groups and the scientific community. Why are you giving money to NASA? You should give money to this organization. Why is NASA getting billions of dollars to go up into space and do nothing? All the starving people, you can't give money to those people to give them a leg up. Like, you hear these arguments, and then you'll see Neil deGrasse Tyson go in front of Congress and explain why it's necessary to have a space budget, not exactly like the Space Force, whatever the fuck that was. I'm still yet to meet someone who's in Space Force. I would like to meet those people. I'm sure they exist. Like Ronald Reagan wanted to do like Star Wars. He had a program like that. But what was I talking about? Yeah, there doesn't have to be a divide between, well, Neil deGrasse Tyson went in front of Congress and he gave this impassioned speech about if it wasn't for the moon landing in the 60s, we wouldn't have developed this and that. We wouldn't have inspired this generation to have imagination of new innovations in technology. We wouldn't have cell phones and stuff if it wasn't for Star Trek and these science fiction shows. And he's probably got pretty good valid points there. I don't think you have to have a divide between religious people and scientific people. There's definitely overlap. You can be both. You can have faith in some kind of spirituality and also think evolution's true or not. It doesn't really matter. I remember people like arguing over that shit. There was like this folk band, I don't know who they were, but they had a song like, I believe in evolution, like making fun of people who believe in evolution. And whatever you want to believe, I don't give a shit. I don't even care if people believe the world's flat. Like, people get offended over that shit because it sounds really stupid or whatever. You're going to go back to flat earth society and whatever, but I don't get like emotionally charged up. If you want to believe the world's flat, go for it, Kyrie Irving or anybody else. I don't give a shit. It's your right to believe whatever the fuck you want to believe in, man. If the evidence is right there, I guess if you take Kyrie Irving, I don't know if he even believes that, to be honest, but the people who really try to make the point that the world is flat, then Jeff Bezos, take those people up in space in your fucking spaceship, and if you see the fucking Earth from space, you'll probably get your opinion might turn into, okay, I guess I was wrong about that. As if people believe the moon landing was faked and all this shit was just manipulated for whatever reason, because people do believe that. Even people said The Shining with Stanley Kubrick, he directed that movie with all these clues that he really directed the moon landing just to fuck with people in some Hollywood set. It's been a conspiracy since it happened, to the point where I think like Buzz Aldrin was punching people in the face who didn't believe he really went to the moon or whatever. So who cares? Like, is that really something people get heated up on? Like, I don't know. I don't give a shit. If somebody believes in evolution, then good. If somebody doesn't believe in it, then good. Who cares? If they want to speak their argument, then I'll listen to anybody. I don't give a shit, dude. Like, people get so offended by these things. Maybe because if you're a scientist and you devote your life to all these theories, because even gravity is kind of a theoretic thing, but it exists, I guess. Or who the fuck knows? Everything's a hallucination. We're living in a simulation, motherfucker. Like, I don't know. If you devote your life to science or the path of secular humanism or atheism, and then you hear these religious people are going to teach your kids that the earth is only 4,000 years old because the Bible said so, or the fundamentalist side of that religious brain is fighting for that type of education, I guess those people will get a little perturbed because they've worked their entire life to kind of test these, because that's a theory too. If you're saying the earth is only 4,000 years old, then prove it. And you can't just say, because the Bible tells me. Like, that's the difference, I think, between religion and science, that religion can just come out with cop-outs. Like, we don't need proof, it's faith. A scientist can't use that as a basis. They can't say, hey, we think this new heart procedure is going to work. Well, did you test it on people? No. Did you see if there's going to be negative side effects to this heart procedure? No. Well, how do you know it's going to work? Because we believe it's going to work. It's faith. It doesn't work in science, but in religion, yeah, it works. You can make up these characters like the devil and demons and angels, and you either believe in it or you don't, but there's no proof of it on either side. There's no proof of any of this shit. But people who spend their entire lives in their religion are the same as those scientists, and you devote your life to this faith, whether you're a Muslim, Jew, Hindu person, Christian, whatever the fuck, Scientologist might read this screenplay and be like, this guy's an idiot. Doesn't he know that the aliens came down and deposited their souls into the first humans? He doesn't even know that shit. He didn't go through those, what's it called? When, I'm not trying to make fun of Scientologists. Don't come kill me or anything. I figure like Scientologists, they'll come in like one of those dark vans and just like, are you talking shit about Scientology? We will end you. We will end you. But yeah, if you spend the majority of your life and you really have this faith that I'm going to go to heaven because I lived a good life and I followed the rules and I did this and that, and then some scientist is trying to convince you that no, the Bible is just metaphors. It doesn't really, you can't take it fundamentally. You can't take it literally. The earth is probably like 23 billion years old, man. It's the Big Bang. It's evolution. It's all this crazy string theory stuff. There's like 100 billion different versions of you in different parallel universes. Don't you know that shit? Like, you're not going to convince people on the other side of stuff like that, at least. Like, I like string theory from what I can comprehend of it. And I like the spiritual side of shit too. There's got to be credence on every angle to this. So that's what I tried to do with this story in a nutshell. There's a fucking guardian angel in it, but there's also all these scientific theories about the Big Bang Theory, how everything started, the theory of it all. I think that's actually like a book by someone. Maybe that's the Hawking's book, right? And believe me, I'm not the right person to speak about quantum anything. I tried to read Stephen Hawking's, I don't even know if that's how you say his name, sorry. The Theory of Everything, if that's his book maybe. Or A History of Time Travel, one of those books like that. And I don't understand any of that shit. when it comes to physics or anything involving universal concepts like string theory, I got the basis down and then that's it. And then I just like don't even want to know anymore because it's too complicated. But it's cool to listen to people talk about it. I can listen to a podcast with one of those people, Neil deGrasse Tyson or anyone like that, and they could talk passionately about string theory or why Interstellar did not achieve proper science fiction or scientific equations, but also it's a fucking movie, so who cares, man? Maybe sometimes these science fiction movies want to be taken seriously as this is real science. So the nerdy side of the audience will be like, yeah, that makes sense. Instead of saying, what, this guy put an angel in this movie? What the fuck does that mean? Like, or other things that I put in this story that have no scientific basis at all. So it's kind of a merging of those two worldviews, which don't have to be like that. Like, I read a book in college called The Clash of Civilizations about how it's never going to be harmonious because there's too many feuding factions of human civilization, whether it's religious or economic philosophies or other shit. That the clash of civilizations is the future, and it's just going to get worse and worse, and other people will come to power, and then there'll be other factions against them. There's never going to be a unified. Well, is that kind of what secular humanism is, where people are no longer viewed by their nationalities, they're just viewed as humans? That's kind of what like humanism is, but I don't think humanism is going to be competing with the world's major religions anytime soon. You take somebody off the street and you say, what's humanism mean? I don't think most people will know what it kind of means. I don't even know what it means. Secular humanist, I don't know what that means as a definition. I think it kind of means you're like a deist, or you just don't know and you're happy to live like that without knowing or professing a faith. A secular humanist will just go through life without those answers and be happy with it, as opposed to somebody with an established religious faith that professes some kind of a narrative, whether it's from the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, which whatever the Torah is, what is that, like the Old Testament books? I think it's just the beginning, the first five books or whatever of the Bible. Yeah, so it's a different experience through life where you're happy to not know. I guess that's kind of like a deist or a theist, like the Thomas Paine example I used a while ago. Thomas Paine was just happy to be like that. He was more critical about the Bible and the politics of religion. Like, I went through his stuff a while ago when I was talking about something else. So it's always been around, that type of a divide between, because sometimes religious people can come off pretty cocky and arrogant, and scientific people as well when they have these debates. I do appreciate those people. Like, all the atheists will hold up certain people as almost like as the spokespeople of the movement of atheism or whatever. And some of them are more interesting than others. Some of them are just kind of arrogant, because it's almost like atheism could become like a religion, and it becomes a method of groupthink where people will confess, or not confess, will profess this faith of atheism, and if you go against it, or it becomes that same type of a groupthink, even though maybe atheists are more open-minded about things. As an atheist, you're kind of saying there's no God. Like, how is there proof of that either? And I know that's harder. You can't really prove a negative. how do you prove there's no God? How do you prove there is a God? And all these stupid conversations like that. But sometimes, yeah, atheism can develop into a narrow-minded focus that becomes arrogant and turns people off to it. That's why I wouldn't label myself anything. I would have to learn more about the humanism things to see what that really entails, because I don't know. I don't like putting labels on anything, myself or other people, because people are so quick to label people this or that. And I've gone back and forth about shit like that, but yeah, you're always going to be changing, so that it's better not to box yourself in so much. It's a natural thing because you're going to be brought up in a tradition, religious tradition. You're going to be brought up with a national pride and ethnic identity and all these different identifiers. But so it's hard not to, and it's not even that bad of a thing, but it can become a mode of ignorance if you give in to the groupthink too much. It does become a dangerous thing, whether it's religious or atheism. It could be anything. You get enough people riled up for a cause, it could be over anything, man. So I'm kind of trying to speak to that because that is a part of this story. There's a spiritual side and there's a scientific side, which I think a lot of good science fiction has explored in the past as well. I'll go back to the Starman movie. John Carpenter, Starman with, I think, Jeff Bridges. Maybe that's a good comparison as well. I don't remember too much of it, but it was good. It kept my interest throughout the whole thing pretty well. Starman, it is Jeff Bridges, yeah. The woman's name is Karen Allen. So this was in, what year was it? 1984. This is from Google, the synopsis. Answering a NASA message intended for aliens, a space being tries to contact mankind, but an American missile grounds his ship. Scrambling, the so-called Starman, Jeff Bridges, inhabits the body of a late Wisconsinite and kidnaps the dead man's widow, Jenny Hayden, Karen Allen. And then they kind of journey together on a road trip. So, yeah, honestly, I didn't watch this movie until a couple of years after I wrote this film, this story, the script. But it does make some relevance in what I'm speaking about. It uses that same plot device, the gold record from the Voyager 2. It uses that just like I did in a different way, but a similar type of experience. Because I said in the first part, when people think of aliens, they think it's going to be people in bodies like us, but it doesn't have to be that. It could just be a consciousness, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be the type of a entity that we imagine through science fiction, or when we look at ourselves in the mirror and we think this is what life is, because we have a body with two eyeballs and an asshole, and we have private parts depending on your sex, and we have two nipples and a belly button and a nose. So we try to imagine what other life forms could be, and religious people probably don't even go down those rabbit holes because there's nothing in the Bible about other planets or other star systems, right? I don't think so. Although there are parts in the Bible about like there's so many stars in the sky, like more than the grains of sand or some quote like that. I don't know. You would have to really get a biblical scholar to dive into the connection between, I don't know, if there's an ancient alien type of experience, the fifth element kind of goes down that, mixing folklore and science fiction together. It's a pretty good movie. Bruce Willis, The Fifth Element, and I forget the woman's name. But yeah, that's a pretty decent movie too. So this has been done before. Science fiction mixing with spirituality. It's not a new concept at all. It's been done a lot of times, and that's what I'm going for in a different imaginative way with a lot of focus on music because that's what I'm always doing. Oh yeah, Jovovich, yeah. And they team up to save the Earth from a cosmic evil. I've seen that movie a couple times, but I don't even remember it. Oh yeah, that other guy's in it too. Chris Tucker's in it. He's pretty good in that. 1997, The Fifth Element. Yeah, that's a pretty trippy movie. I like that one a lot. And yeah, a good science fiction movie would survive that test of time through the generations. So, what would you want to show to your kids? Would you show them The Fifth Element, Starman? Definitely, those are. If I had kids, those would be two movies I would show them later in life because they're so well made. Even though it's from the late '90s, they're still just like brilliantly directed and cinematography is awesome. Even the last Kubrick movie was just called AI, right? AI Kubrick. I think I saw it in the theaters when it came out, and it was one of those movies that I think got a lot of hype because it was like 3 hours long from 2001. Yeah, yeah. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. I thought it had something to do with Kubrick. Yeah, so Kubrick handed this movie to Spielberg, but the film did not gain momentum until Kubrick died in 1999. All right, so there is a connection there. I've only watched that once, but I remember it being really fucking long, but definitely well made. So, yeah, science fiction, there's always going to be a market for it because whether you're a nerdy science guy or you're a jock, you can find something in a movie like Interstellar or Minority Report, which that's one of my favorites as well. Minority Reports, yeah, that would be on my top three, top five science fiction movies. Even The Matrix, still, I always mention The Matrix in a lot of my discussions like this, so that's up there. There's so much good science fiction, it's hard to keep track of it. And this is my only attempt at science fiction, maybe because as you hear me speak, yeah, I'm not, my brain isn't really fit out for science fiction. I'm more horror. I like horror movies better, or writing horror movies, writing more psychological, fever dream type of plays and stuff. When it comes to science fiction, it's for more intelligent people than myself. Uh, if somebody wanted to make this movie, I would need like other people to guide me through a lot of this because I did my best. I didn't even know what color Neptune was. I had to look that up again and again and try to get a better sense of the solar system as this gold record is going through space over the decades as we watch Lori age as well. What planet would it be passing? Like, I did make an attempt, but I'm sure I got a lot of things wrong because I'm just going by the internet, and the internet is not as trustworthy as an actual quantum physicist or somebody like that. But yeah, I'm always about uniting people together, man. I wrote my stupid musical. I'm going to end here because I'm at 2.5 hours. I wrote a musical about the gay dinosaur agenda way back, maybe in 2023 or so. And I wrote this stupid musical play about gay dinosaurs, and I just pictured these actors on stage like at Avenue Q or the Book of Mormon, like that type of a musical. I've never really followed up to write the actual songs besides like one of the songs. And I just thought it would be cool to bring the LGBTQ community together with religious people. even though they'll never come to terms on certain issues, there's no reason to keep the same arguments going over and over again. Because is it really worth that much of a conflict? I think like humor is the best way to deal with shit like that. Because people who are brought up uncomfortable about their sexuality. Like if you're brought up Catholic, yeah, you're taught like sex is bad, and you're taught to be ashamed of nudity and sex. Maybe it's a population control, or it's because like whatever religion they want to claim control over your sexuality or your sex life. They don't want you to have that independent free love that the hippies tried to do in the 60s. Maybe it's better like that. I don't know. I don't have a sex life. I've never had a sex life. Besides masturbation, I've never had like a normal sexual relationship with anybody. So I'm not the right person to speak to about that either, but I just bring that up because it's another divide between religion and secularism, or whatever you want to call it. The heathens. So when I wrote that musical, The Gay Dinosaur Agenda, it was supposed to be such a ridiculous satire because there's conspiracies about the gay agenda. There's conspiracies about dinosaur bones were planted in the soil by heathens and Satanists to devalue the Bible and make people lose their faith. There's actual like conspiracies about that. All these dinosaur bones were not really there to begin with. Somebody put them in the ground, and dinosaurs probably didn't even exist. It's all just a big conspiracy. And who the fuck knows? If that's what you believe, don't take this as me making fun of you. You can believe it. I would like to hear all sides of any argument. I don't care. Maybe not any argument, but that's at least interesting to me to hear. I would love to hear somebody who believes dinosaurs are 100% conspiracy to, what's the word I'm thinking of? To devalue the stories of the Bible, or to cause doubt in people's minds, whatever. The devil put those bones there. I listen to those people just because it's probably an interesting argument. The reason I wrote that story was, I think it would be cool if people like that are so fundamental about beliefs like that. Maybe it's from that movie Religulous with Bill Maher that he did. That was pretty good. And he's interviewing people like that, I think, who believe the earth is definitely 4,000 years old based on biblical text. And all these fossil accounts are bullshit. All these dinosaur bones are just put there by the devil. Like, that is an interesting angle. I'm not saying it has any credibility, but I like hearing people's thoughts on all stuff like that. It's just interesting. So when I wrote that musical, that was my thinking. You could get a room of people watching this musical about gay dinosaurs and all these crazy conspiracies, and at the end, all these dinosaurs become extinct, and there's one like Inquisitor, like during the Inquisition, there was a Grand Inquisitor who was probably in charge of picking out the witches and who to kill. You're a heathen. They would throw people in water, and if they didn't float, or if what was it? I don't even remember now. Listen to the Radiohead song, Burn the Witch. I think they talk about that. Whatever. The Grand Inquisitor would be like this dinosaur preacher, and he's trying to get these gay dinosaurs to change their ways. And then at the end, the meteor still hits, and all these dinosaurs go extinct. And they're going to think it's because they're gay, but really it's just the chaos of the universe. All the murdering and the pilfering and all this other evil shit that people did. I'm not comparing that to the gay community or anything. Because, I'm cool with that. If people want to be that, that's not a big deal for me at all. If people want to live that LGBTQ lifestyle, totally cool. I'm not promoting it or saying it's evil or anything like that. People can do whatever the fuck they want, in my mind. And yeah, but I just thought it would be a funny way to end this story. That because you always hear people say that, not always. There'll be like an earthquake somewhere, and some preacher will come out and say, "This is because God's angry at all the homosexuals," or you'll hear other stuff like that. So that was my mentality for creating a story like that, to poke fun at every angle of human sexuality like that. When these issues become politicized, like the transgender bathrooms that was in the news for a while, or other things, yeah, to me it kind of just it's out there um, to claim control of the conversation away from other things, the economy and other aspects of. Um, I don't want to say these aren't real problems, but the everyday person doesn't really have to be concerned with which bathroom to go in or stuff like that. I feel like the media plays these issues because they know certain people will that are on those teams, like we're on the right, we're on the left, prepare to battle over transgender bathrooms beginning now. And the media likes to prop up issues like that just to divide people up and cause stupid controversies like that. Just like TMZ does. It's no different. Maybe a little different. There's some news that, is valuable. But yeah, that's why I wrote a story like that. Why do I bring this up? Because, yeah, I'm speaking of the divide between religious people and science. And it doesn't have to be like that. Just like the clash of civilizations doesn't have to be like that because somebody wrote a book about it, and because over the last whatever number of generations, certain people don't seem to get along with certain people based on religion, based on nationality, based on skin color, based on all these other identifiers, based on sexuality. And it's like, do you want to keep living that reality or do you want to change it? Because, every generation dies off. It's always the next generation up at bat that gets to decide the direction people are going in. It's just how it is, man. The older people, older generation that might hold these feuds, and maybe that's how they keep people in line or keep societies in order by developing these other civil wars or these other external conflicts. It's the strong man. It's don't pay attention to me. Pay no attention to the man behind the mirror, behind the curtain. It's that same reality. I don't know. So yeah, I've always said it's the new generation that can either carry that torch and carry the trauma that other generations went, or just say, fuck this, let's just not go down the same path anymore. So I got faith in younger people to do that. I don't know why I'm basing this. I just feel like the internet's the reason. I'll talk shit on the internet, but because of the internet, you can connect to anyone you want in a second. In any country, anyone, you can connect with people, and hopefully the right information would spread and people would find out that, hey, we're all going through the same shit on this fucking planet. So why are we still carrying these feuds and all this shit that our parents did and their parents did? Why are we constantly dividing people up by country, by nationality, by race, and by all these religious issues? Why do you want to continue that? Or I don't know. It's because to play devil's advocate, it's because it's hard to think about the new social order without all those things. People got mad because they were like, see, you got rid of Saddam Hussein and Iraq became even more chaotic. Like, I heard people say that back in the day. You get rid of all these state sponsored or religious sponsored institutions that keep the order, whether it's a church or the prison system or other things that have pros and cons, of course. And people are afraid to move away from those social modes. And I'm not blaming them for that. Yeah, you don't know what the world's going to look like as attitude shift and paradigm shift. And yeah, it is a scary thing to think about, but it doesn't have to be. Like, it's only a scary thing because different groups of people have created this atmosphere of hatred and vengeance and all this shit on a global scale because of tribalism and all that stuff. Yeah, but if that stuff didn't exist, of course, it would be pretty easy. You could go anywhere in the world and people wouldn't care who you are or where you came from as a method of identity. Oh, you're American? Well, what about that shit that... Well, don't equate the people to the government is the main point. Like, I think that's the main point that stays with me now. You can't equate the people with things that the government does. Like, these days, people don't even vote on shit. So how do you know what you're even being represented by anymore? I'm just speaking of American politics. I don't know how other countries do it. But yeah, it seems to be all kinds of fucked up at this point. I try to keep politics out of this, but you know, it just sneaks in the conversation when you talk about stuff like this. But I'll end it here. I probably should have ended this like an hour ago. But hopefully you get a taste of this one. The next story is going to be... Shit, what's the next one? I forget what episode 3 is. Episode 3 is another horror movie, or a horror screenplay. It's called Jailbreak. So I'll talk about that one tomorrow and have more fun with that one. I spoke about John Carpenter today with Starman, so tomorrow is another tribute to John Carpenter type of script. Jailbreak is my kind of a tribute to Halloween and that flavor of a movie that is still probably my favorite horror movie. My favorite science fiction movie probably is 2001, because I spoke about that to death in my book. I had a whole chapter on 2001, Space Odyssey. But tomorrow is a horror story. Is a horror story called Jailbreak, and it's perfect because the summer is approaching, and one of the ways you know that summer is approaching as a kid is when you hear the ice cream truck, or whatever the hell your town did. And this story is kind of morbid, but I'll speak about it more tomorrow. But it's related to an ice cream truck doppelganger demon. So yeah, get ready for that one. It's kind of a morbid ride. It's kind of bloody. It's got a lot of different influences from John Carpenter to Stephen King stuff. One of the scariest things I remember as a kid is the movie It, when they finally find the clown's lair, and he's like a giant fucking spider, and they have to like beat the shit out of this fucking disgusting spider dude, and they're just like these teenage kids just kicking the shit out of this spider. And I'm like, man, that shit freaked me out as a kid, even more than the clown thing. But, you know, now I can watch it, and it's kind of like a comedy. But as a kid, I was probably like 11 or 12. Every time I went past like a sewer grate, I was like, fuck, I hope there's no fucking evil clowns down there that are really giant spiders. So yeah, there's a bit of that too. I'll get into the details tomorrow. But yeah, horror movies are better when you're a kid and you still have that fear inside of you. They don't really work as much anymore, but it's more those psychological films that kind of get to me, at least in my older age now that I'm in my 40s. It's more the psychological horror than like the jump scares or the demons or zombies. Although The Walking Dead had some moments that freaked me out when I watched the Walking Dead. Some of those episodes did get pretty gnarly, man. Where, yeah, I think I was legitimately freaked out. And yeah, just they looked so cool. The zombies were done so well. But yeah, I'll stop it here. Tomorrow's a horror theme, so we're going back to the horror genre. We already kind of explored it with Everything is Free, but this is more of a, I don't want to say slasher. It's part slasher, part horror, like a folklore, demonic type of thing. But yeah, I'll talk about it more tomorrow. All right, so that's all for today.